minute, 30 seconds. Well, welcome. Welcome to the people who are still standing outside. Welcome to the people who have come inside. Welcome to the two people who are watching online. Tonight we're doing Café Church. So it's actually going to work better if you find yourself at a table. And so I encourage you to come forward to sit at the table. If you're watching at home, this will work for you as well. You don't need to be sitting at one of these tables to enter into discussion. We are continuing our Lenten journey, and we're going to be exploring the practical side of the stuff that we were talking about last week. We started this conversation in morning church this morning, and the general feedback I was getting from then is, this is really hard. But I had about 4 people say, this is the stuff that we should be talking about in church. And I really encourage us to engage in the same way, that this is the stuff we should be talking about in church. But it's not going to necessarily be the easiest way forward. I'm going to just acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are worshipping on, the Turramurra people, and pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. As we worship tonight, may we walk gently on their land. We've got some praise and worship. For the people at home, I'm only going to have a single shot, so it won't be jumping around. Ooh. Thanks, Ine. I'm not quite the telly's on. That's where I'm hearing the echo from. This is just surreal, hearing my voice come back. I'm going to hand over to Jonty so he can hear his voice.
Hello. No, it's not coming back at me now.
Yeah,
are we going to invite everyone to stand, or are we just going to keep sitting around?
Whatever
the
you
tables?
like.
I mean, whatever you feel like doing. But we're going to start with some worship. I was an orphan lost at the fall, running away when I hear your call. But Father, you worked your will. I had no righteousness on my own. I had no right to draw near your throne. But Father, you loved me still. And in love before you laid the world's foundation, destined to adopt me as your own. You have raised me so high above my station. I'm a a child of God by grace and grace alone. You left your home to seek out the lost. You knew the great and terrible cost, but Jesus, your face was set. I worked my fingers down to the bone, and nothing I did could ever atone. Jesus, you paid my debt, and by your blood I have redemption and salvation. Lord, you died that I might reap what you have sown, and you rose that I might be a new creation. I am born again by grace and grace alone. I was in darkness all of my life. I never knew the day from the night. The Spirit, you made me see. I swore I knew the way on my own. A head full of rocks, a heart made of stone. The Spirit, you moved in me. Let your touch, my sleeping spirit was awakened. On my darkened heart, the light of Christ has shone. Called into a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Heaven's citizen by grace and grace alone. So I'll stand in faith by grace and grace alone. I will run the race by grace and grace alone. I will slay my sin by grace and grace alone. I will reach the end by grace and grace alone. We're going to continue with Here as in Heaven. we're now going to enter into a time of prayer.
Sorry about mucking up that song. I thought I had it right, so I was sitting down here, but I obviously didn't. Let's come before God in prayer. Let's pray. Lord God, the earth is yours and everything's in it. You are worthy of our praise tonight. We thank you for your love and your mercy, that in Jesus' life and death and resurrection, you became poor so that we may be rich. So help us tonight as we worship, not only to honour you with our words and actions, but to honour the least, those who are forgotten, those who are overlooked, and those who are misjudged. Jesus, you showed us by your example your bias to those who are least, to those who are left behind, those who are misunderstood and undervalued. So tonight we celebrate the way that you include, the way that you offer all of us a warm welcome, the way that you offer a family to those who are alone. So help us be your ears listening to their cries. Help us to be your voice speaking out love and acceptance. Help us to be your feet walking beside those in need. And help us to be your hands helping those with needs. Be with us as we worship tonight. Amen. Kevin's on cooking duty, so I'll just keep going, shall I? Just a few quick announcements before we jump into the discussion that we're going to have. Here we go. Birthdays, Nigel and Audrey. I'm just going to move over here so that you can actually see me. Here we go. Well, I'm very loud with this though, aren't I? Is that all right? If I'm not, how far do I have to get across to get into this shot? I was thinking I was in the wrong camera. Youth groups continue. Last Wednesday night we had the large group Bible study. We'll talk a bit more about that later. But for those people who were there, how was it? I thought it was really good, but I was a bit biased. There are two more to go, Wednesday the 23rd and Wednesday the 6th of April. We had about 30 people here, really, really good discussion. The stuff that came out of it was great, and I would really encourage you to consider coming along on the 23rd and the 6th. We don't have to worry about that one. Baptism and Confirmation Sundays are happening on the 27th of March, which is only 2 weeks' time. Beach baptisms in the afternoon at 3:30 down at Mona Vale Beach, back here for the celebration service. This is a really big deal for those going through it and for the church community. And so I encourage you to make sure that you can put that in your diary and to come along and support not only the people going through it, but support the community as we celebrate. Really big day, that one. Easter is coming. If you're a person who likes to donate towards the Easter egg hunts, yes, there are multiple ones this year because we are also doing some down at Turramurra for the community as well. And lastly, no, you don't need to know about the Seniors' Day, do we? Anyone? No? And just helping our sister churches, this is Linfield Uniting Church, are having their market on the 26th of March. All's good? We're going to have our Bible reading because I'm trying to get as much discussion time in tonight as we can around the tables. As I said before, Kevin's off. Can you smell it? We'll bring out some food and help us to engage around tables. But Brett's going to bring us our Bible reading for tonight. There's two short ones that are both out of what we call the Lenten readings, the readings that happen in the lead up to Easter. And so these are Jesus' experiences. Do you want this television or the one behind you, Brett, or the one over there? Which one can you see best?
Luke chapter 9.
Yeah, that's certainly on.
Luke chapter 19, verse 45 to 47. When Jesus entered the temple courts, he began to drive out those who were selling. It is written. He said to them, My house will be house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers. Every day he was teaching at the temple, but the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the leaders among the people were trying to kill him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately the bleeding stopped. Well, who touched me? Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you. But Jesus said, someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me. Then the woman, saying that she could not be untouched, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace.
That's it. Thanks, Brett. So this is part 3 of our sermon series. If you're wondering how I'm up to part 3 already since I only started last Sunday, that's because Wednesday night was part of the input. If you missed out on Wednesday night, you can go back on our Facebook page and watch that input as well. There was too much in there for me to summarise quickly now. But if you missed it, I've got the video I showed at the beginning about justice. For those people who were there, was that a good video to show, the boxes? I thought it was great, and I thought it gave the context of what we're trying to do here. And so we're going to show, this video goes for about 6 minutes. So during that time, Kevin's going to bring out food. We can turn on the coffee machine if you would like to make yourself a coffee, and do all that sort of stuff while we're watching this video, and then we'll be ready for our discussion to jump in. Is that all right? Sorry for those who are here and have already seen it before. I think it's worth watching twice. So here is the Bible Project's understanding of justice. It raises two or three really good points. You might like to, as you watch it, go, if I was asked the question, what jumped out at me from the end, what would I say? This works for the people at home as well. So here is the Bible Project.
If you were a praying mantis, it would be socially acceptable to devour your mate.
And if you're a honey badger, you have no regard for other animals. You don't care.
If you're a panda with twins, it's normal to abandon one to take care of the other.
But if humans do any of these things, we would call it wrong, unfair, or unjust.
Yeah, why is that? Why do humans care so much about justice?
Well, the Bible has a fascinating response to that question. On page 1, humans are set apart from all other creatures as the image of God.
Yeah, God's representatives who rule the world by his definition of good and evil.
And this identity, it's the bedrock of the Bible's view of justice. All humans are equal before God and have the right to be treated with dignity and fairness no matter who you are.
And that would be nice if we all did that. But we know how the world really works.
And the Bible addresses that too. It shows how we are constantly redefining good and evil to our own advantage at the expense of others.
Yeah, self-preservation. And the weaker someone is, the easier it is to take advantage of them.
And so in the biblical story, we see this happening on a personal level, but also in families, and then in communities, and in whole civilizations that create injustice, especially towards the vulnerable. But the story doesn't end there. Out of this whole mess, God chose a man named Abraham to start a new kind of family. Specifically, Abraham was to teach his family to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice.
Yeah, doing righteousness, that's a Bible word I don't really use, but what comes to mind is being a good person.
But what does that even mean, being good? The biblical Hebrew word for righteousness is tzedakah, and it's more specific. It's an ethical standard that refers to right relationships between people. It's about treating others as the image of God,
With the God-given dignity they deserve.
and this word justice, it's the Hebrew word mishpat. It can refer to retributive justice.
Like if I steal something, I pay the consequences.
Exactly. Yet most often in the Bible, mishpat refers to restorative justice. It means going a step further, actually seeking out vulnerable people who are being taken advantage of and helping them.
Yeah, some people call this charity.
But mishpat involves way more. It means taking steps to advocate for the vulnerable and changing social structures to prevent injustice.
So justice and righteousness are about a radical, selfless way of life.
Yeah, and you find this idea all over the Bible. Like here, in the book of Proverbs, what does it mean to bring about just righteousness?
Open your mouth for those who can't speak for themselves.
And what do these words mean for the prophets, like Jeremiah?
Rescue the disadvantaged, and don't tolerate oppression or violence against the immigrant, the orphan, and the widow.
And like here, look in the book of Psalms.
The Lord God upholds justice for the oppressed, gives food to the hungry, and sets the prisoner free. But he thwarts the way of the wicked. Whoa, he thwarts the wicked?
Yeah, in Hebrew, the word wicked is rasha. It means guilty or in the wrong. It refers to someone who mistreats another human, ignoring their dignity as an image of God.
So justice and righteousness is a big deal to God.
Yes, it's what Abraham's family, the Israelites, were to be all about. They ended up as immigrant slaves being oppressed unjustly in Egypt. And so God confronted Egypt's evil, declaring them to be rasha, guilty of injustice. And so he rescued Israel. But the tragic irony of the Old Testament story is that these redeemed people went on to commit the same acts of injustice against the vulnerable. And so God sent prophets who declared Israel guilty.
But they weren't the only ones. There's injustice everywhere.
Yeah, some people actively perpetrate injustice. Others receive benefits or privileges from unjust social structures they take for granted. And sadly, history has shown that when the oppressed gain power, they often become oppressors themselves.
So we all participate in injustice, actively or passively, even unintentionally. We're all the guilty ones.
And so this is the surprising message of the biblical story. God's response to humanity's legacy of injustice is to give us a gift, the life of Jesus. He did righteousness and justice, and yet he died on behalf of the guilty. But then God declared Jesus to be the righteous one when he rose from the dead. And so now Jesus offers his life to the guilty so that they too can be declared righteous before God, not because of anything they've done, but because of what Jesus did for them.
The earliest followers of Jesus experienced this righteousness from God, not just as a new status, but as a power that changed their lives and compelled them to act in surprising new ways.
Yeah, if God declared someone righteous when they didn't deserve it, the only reasonable response is to go and seek righteousness and justice for others.
This is a radical way of life, and it's not always convenient or easy. It's courageously making other people's problems my problems.
This is what Jesus meant by loving your neighbor as yourself. It's about a lifetime commitment fueled by the words of the ancient prophet Micah. God has told you, humans, what is good and what the Lord requires of you is to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.
Hey, this is John and Tim from the Bible Project. Thanks for watching this video. This was a theme video where we take one biblical motif and trace it from beginning to end. We also do a lot of other videos you can find here on our YouTube channel.
The Bible Project is a non-profit animation studio, and we're crowdfunded, which means you can help us make the next videos. You can find more information at our website, thebibleproject.com.
Sorry about that for the people who are at home. So for the people who are at home, you can ponder that video. The people in the church, we're going to serve ourselves like now. Come and grab a plate. Let's start doing this. The coffee machine is there. If you want a coffee, you'll need to walk out and find yourself a coffee cup because we don't seem to have any. I really appreciated the images of the boxes in that video. I don't know if you felt that was a good imagery of the boxes lowering and hiring, getting lower or higher depending about what was happening around them. And to me, that was part of what justice is about. What about the people at home? What jumped out for you in that video? Please write in the comments section, because is there feedback again, Stephen? So just while they're doing, serving up the cafe part of the Café Church here, yes, Gus, the gluten-free options are, yes. So just while you're finishing serving, I'm going to make two more observations about the video, and then I'll open up for anyone else who wants to give an observation. I found the definition of restorative judgment and justice and retribution justice very helpful. That sense that the retribution justice, if you do something wrong, sometimes we have to suffer the consequence. But restorative justice, that idea of how do we stand against the systems that push the boxes down. And the comment that there was a lot of talk in the Bible about the restorative justice, much more than the retribution justice. The other comment that jumped out to me was that line that those people who have been oppressed, when they get released from that oppression, sometimes become the people who are the oppressed as well. All right, how are we going? Have we served ourselves? Tonight our theme is how do we loosen the chains of the material poor. I defined material poor last Sunday by saying the people who literally do not have enough to live. So we're not talking about people who wish they would have this or wish they would have that. That's fine. These are the people who are missing out of the essentials of life. And last week I encouraged that Lent was going to be about praying, about fasting, about almsgiving. That's alms with an L, almsgiving, which means how do we help in the spirit of Isaiah 58. Now that's the key verse, and I'll read this out again because this is defining everything we're doing in Lent, where God says, the kind of fasting I want is this, to remove the chains of oppression and the yoke of injustice, to let the oppressed go free, to share your food with the hungry, open your homes to the homeless poor, and give clothes to those who have nothing to wear. And do not refuse help to your own relatives. Or as I said to you last week, that Hebrew can also be interpreted as, and do not refuse help to those who are close to you or nearby you. So it's not just you got to help your brother or sister, you got to help the people who are outside your door. And so on Wednesday night, we asked that question, how do we help those people who are materially poor, who do not have the things they need to live and thrive, such as food, clean water, shelter, access to education, healthcare, equality, etc., etc. And if you were here on Wednesday night, I shared an analogy by Oscar Romero. He was a cardinal who lived in South America in the 80s. Huge social justice voice. And he talked about this imagery of if you saw a house on fire, and you can imagine a house on fire, we would be concerned for the owners of the house. We would hope that they're okay, that they got out safely. We would show concern. But he said, what would happen if you realised it was your family's home, or that your mother and your sister were still in there? That would change everything completely. You'd be much more than concerned. Actually, he said you would be running there to do something, even if it meant risk to your own personal safety. He said that's what it means to be committed. And he went on to offer this challenge to Christians. He sort of said, when it comes to helping the poor, or those people who don't have the things that they need to live and thrive, how do we move from being concerned to being committed to make a difference? Because that's the point, isn't it? We're all concerned about those who don't have enough. I don't think any of us would say that we are not concerned. But sometimes we struggle to move past that indifference to actually go, well, what can I do to help? In one of the Bible readings that Brett read out for us, we talked about the woman who reached out and touched Jesus' cloak. She had been affected by bleeding for 12 years, and our reading told us that no one could help her. Actually, the Mark version of the story says that she had spent all her money on doctors and nothing was getting better. Actually, it was getting worse. And there's actually a bit of debate about why couldn't the doctors heal her? All right, first group discussion. I'm only going to give you 90 seconds. How would you answer that question? Why couldn't the doctors heal the woman who had been, affected by this medical condition for 12 years? Talk in your groups. People online. People online, you can comment. Five, four, three, two, one. Okay, so do we have an answer? In the debate that some of the scholars have, they come up with three different solutions or three different ideas to answer that question. Did anybody have one? Why couldn't the doctors heal her? I heard one over here. Do you want to speak in the microphone so the people at home can hear?
Yeah, we sort of agreed that the doctors were basing their help on science rather than faith.
Yep.
On their knowledge. Yeah.
So is that also a hint that they may not have had the medical knowledge to actually solve that problem at that time? Yes, that is certainly one of the answers that scholars have come up with. Anyone else had a different one beside that? Do you want to hear what some of the other solutions were? Yes. Here it is. Here's some other ones. Yeah, so they didn't know how. Some people said that line about her not running out of money could be that she wasn't healed because she literally could not afford the treatment. So it wasn't just that they didn't know how. Maybe they did know how, but she couldn't pay for the treatment, so therefore she wasn't healed. And this had been going on for 12 years. Or that last one's even worse, that maybe she was being exploited, that the doctors not only knew how to heal her, but were deliberately not healing her because they liked taking her money as she was caught in this desperate need to be healed, and they were taking advantage of her desperation. And if they healed her, then that money flow would have gone. Can you see those 2 points of view? Now, we might argue they're terrible, that people couldn't actually afford treatment, or even worse, that people were being exploited because of their illnesses. That surely wouldn't be happening in today's world, would it? Unfortunately, over half the world does not have access to essential health care. This is not, the health care that we might go, I want this to be looked at. This is essential health care half the world don't have access to because of either they're too poor or it isn't available to them. That's stunning, isn't it? Now, on Wednesday night, I ran through the Millennium Goals. I don't know if you know about the Millennium Goals. Millennium Goals were goals that the governments of the world put together in 1990, so possibly before all of you were born. Who was born before 1990? Yeah, a few of us. And they ran for 25 years, so finished in 2015. And so we can actually look back and go, how did they go? And I ran through these on Wednesday night. And I'm not going to go through them again, but you can have a look at the video if you want to know about them. But I was watching the room as I was running through this, and it was almost like the room was getting overwhelmed by numbers. Like I would say things like the first one, eradicate extreme poverty, and say, yes, there has been an improvement in that over the 25 years, but there are still 830 million people living in extreme poverty in the world. And you could see everyone in the room sort of go, oh. Or I'd talk about, the fact that 99% of women who die in childbirth die in a developing country. And you could see everyone just go, oh. And I was running through all these statistics, and you could feel that weight of the room just sort of going, oh my goodness, this problem is so huge. And it basically came down to this sense I was feeling people going, what can we possibly do? The issue is so big, so broad, so complex. What can we possibly do to even begin to try and break the chains of the material poor? Notice that I don't call this series Break the Chains, even though half the Bible translations translate Isaiah 58 as break the chains. I've gone for loosen the chains, which the other half do, because I don't think we can break the chains. It's just too hard, but we can try and loosen the chains a bit. And so this is the question I want to put out to the people who are watching online and the people around the tables. I'm going to give you probably 5 minutes, maybe even more, to talk about this. A very simple question: what have you heard people doing, or what have you done, or even what would you like to do that might loosen the chains of the material pull just a little bit? Now, that's too broad of a question. So I've given you 4 starters to think about. What can we do, or what have you heard people doing, or what would you like to do to help people affected by the East Coast floods? That's very relevant at the moment. What would you like to do, or what have you heard people doing who are helping those affected by the war in Ukraine? Or by Australian homelessness, which is still much larger than we'd ever imagine it being at this time in 2022. Or the last one is the struggling poor. In Australia, there are people who are in extreme poverty, but that number is quite small in Australia. What we have more is what we call the struggling poor, the people who have some money but are really struggling to make any sort of ends meet and are caught in a cycle of not only debt but discrimination and exploitation, because they are just living day by day. So that's what I think we have more in Australia than extreme poverty. So there's 4 starter points. Just around your table, do you have any stories? Have you heard, well, actually, I read this on Facebook, or I saw this story on Instagram, or something or other, of any of those 4 things, of something that people are doing to try and make a difference? Got the idea? Yep. 5 minutes or so around the table. Let's see what comes out of this. For the people who are online, feel free to write comments. Oh, Stephen already is. That sounds like an excellent idea, Stephen. I'll read that out later when we get to the feedback. But if there's any other ideas, feel free to put it in the comment section. Do you need more time? Are you still telling stories? Because I'm really keen to hear some stories. And I know that Stephen online is keen to hear some stories too, because he shared one of his. He said that his church is up in Mudgee are doing a thing called the Mudgee Pantry, which people can come and fill a shopping cart for $10. So whatever they need, $10. He's even given me the link. Thanks, Stephen. Does anybody else want to share a story? I know that you've just shared it around your table, but is there any good story that you want to share? None. All right, I'll see how Anyone? No? I heard all the discussion going on.
Everyone's scared of the mic.
Obviously.
People are booking out Airbnbs in Ukraine.
Yes. Yes. So, Stephen, that was the Airbnbs in Ukraine story, that people are booking those out because the money goes directly to it. I heard they're doing it through Etsy as well. They're finding different ways to get directly to the people so that the people have got access to money. It's a little bit harder now because now they're running out of food to actually buy with the money. Yeah. I heard a great story of a town in Italy during the week who are receiving Ukraine refugees, and they did all the normal stuff that you do. They welcome them, they put them up in motels, they put the kids in school, they sang welcoming songs, and all the stuff which is really nice. But the one that blew me away is that they asked them, "What do you need?" And the Ukraine said, "We want to give back. We want to work. We want to work." And so they found out everything that the refugees were needing, the people who were needing help, what jobs they did back in Ukraine, and they basically paired them up with somebody in the town, and they said, "Yep, go to work with them." I just thought, that is good. That's a good response, to listen and to respond like that. It was a great story. What about the floods? The floods are a hard one. I shared on my table that I'm struggling a little bit because I think the government should be solving a lot of these problems, and they don't seem to be stepping up as much as I'd like them to. So I struggle with a bit, but there is still a place for people to be helping out. Here's a good question for you. Who knows somebody who is personally affected by any of the East Coast floods? See how many hands are going up at the moment? There's a lot. We know people personally. So it's not necessarily just giving money to the Red Cross so they can be helping. It's us asking the people that we know personally, how can we help? What can we do? Sometimes we can't do anything. We tried that during the week with somebody I knew, and I know it's fine, but thanks for the offer. But by trying and talking individually to people to find out what their key needs are. The homelessness one. Does anybody do anything for the people who are homeless or the struggling poor here? Come on, Isaac. Yeah. Our church supports the dish, not only by making meals, which I know some people in this room make meals, not only by serving, I know some people in this room help serve, but also in the ministry, the administration part of the dish as well, which is incredibly important. There is people in our church who serve there too. I've actually got a video of the dish. Do you want to see Isaac speaking? Yes. Here is Isaac and the dish. Where are you?
Hi, church. This is Isaac and some of the people from the Dish team here on our Friday night. And Phil just asked us to say why we're here. Well, we're here at the Dish, and some people from the church have made some yummy food and some desserts. And this is just a great opportunity to give back to some people in the community who are in need. And at the moment, we just give it to them outside the drive-in little window there because of the COVID restrictions. But it's still lots of fun. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I didn't do any editing at the end. Thanks, Isaac, for recording that. If you've never seen what the dish looks like, normally they're sitting down and being able to relate and connect with each other. They're having to serve like this at the moment. If that's something you're interested in doing, talk to Isaac or talk to myself or Kevin. We will show you how you can either be involved in the cooking, so you don't even have to go. You can just cook, or serving, or the administration. We do it once every 2 months. So it's not even that onerous. Once every 2 months we're involved in the dish. There's a whole bunch of other churches who do that as well. I also want to suggest that there is a place for being spontaneous and creative when we're dealing with this sort of stuff. I read a great story on Twitter just the other day of a person who was at the hospital cafe, canteen, whatever you call it, cafeteria, standing behind this woman who had her purse open going through the coins. And he made the assumption that she obviously had been sitting beside somebody who's unwell in the hospital and has come down for dinner and is now trying to work out what she could afford. And he felt a prompting. I don't know if you want to do that religiously, that she felt God prompting, or was it a compassionate response within him going, I need to do something here. And without making a big deal, he just, leant over a bit closer and said, if you'd like to, I can cover this. Choose what you want, I can pay. And the way that he wrote it, he just sort of said, you just saw this relief flow over her. He said it was the best $7 he's ever spent. But that came from a spontaneous thing. He saw something and going, you know what? I can do something here. I can be helpful to somebody who is struggling. I had a spontaneous thought just as I was walking in church tonight. Some very kind person has donated a stack of blankets and towels out the front of the chapel. I'm sitting there, my first reaction was, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to have to deal with this now, I don't have time to try and work out what do I do with, 15 blankets and a whole bunch of towels that are sitting out there. And if I don't do anything with them, then they're just going to sit out there and get dirty and we'll throw them out. What am I supposed to do? But it's just one of these moments that somebody here might go, you know what, I can be spontaneous. Leave it to me. I will sort out where I can send 15 blankets to that's actually going to be helpful and meaningful. I don't know. I think some of these moments where we can be creative and spontaneous are the stuff that actually can be the most helpful too. I want to wrap up by talking about two very quick things. Can I do that? I know we've been more discussion, but I think these 2 points are really important. The other Bible reading I had was about Jesus in the temple, and the question that I'm going to get you to very quickly talk around the tables is, this is another night one, why was Jesus so angry? There is a Sunday school answer, and there is a more complex answer. What were you taught in Sunday school? Why was Jesus so angry? Actually, let's not worry about the discussion, just yell it out. Why was Jesus angry? That they had turned the temple into a marketplace. Were you taught that at Sunday school? This actually is in the John version of the gospel. It says, you have turned, it's supposed to be a house of prayer, you've turned it into a marketplace. The other three gospels doesn't use that phrase marketplace, it uses another phrase. And Brett read it out to us tonight. Do you remember the phrase that Jesus called it in the Bible reading for tonight? Do you remember, Brett? What Jesus called the temple. He said, you've made it a den of thieves or a den of robbers. That's what the other three Gospels call it. Not a marketplace, but a den of robbers. That's two totally different things, isn't it? One's going, yes, why are you in here selling? The other one's saying you're doing something wrong here. I hope it's not about turning the church into a marketplace, because every time we hold a flea market, we literally turn the church into a marketplace. But that den of robbers one's really interesting, and some scholars wonder whether Jesus was actually angry with the systematic injustice within the temple system. Do you know what I'm talking about there? What happened is that they were supposed to come along and make a sacrifice to God. But the religious leaders said you can't bring your own sacrifices because they have to be holy and pure, and only we can decide what is a holy and pure sacrifice. So you had to buy your sacrifice off the priests and the religious leaders at a markup. But even worse, they said you can't use Roman coins, which was the currency of the day, to buy the temple stuff. You have to use the temple coins. So you had to first change your Roman money into temple money, of course, which had a fee. So these people who were doing what God required of them to come and sacrifice in the temple actually were being exploited by the religious people by bumping up the price twice. And maybe Jesus, because he'd been in the temple plenty of times, but he walked in this time and he just snapped and said, "This is wrong. What you are doing, the systematic injustice here, is wrong. And we need to stand up against that." Because it actually said, what did he do? He got a cord and he took out the animals, and then he tipped over the tables of the coins. The two things that were being unjustly done in the temple. Interesting perspective, isn't it? Maybe it was not about the market at all. If they were doing it properly, it would have gone fine. This is something that they have to do. But because they were ripping off, the people who had money were trying to rip off the people who had a little and make sure that they had even less. Jesus said, not on, not on. And that gives an interesting question. We've talked about practical things we can do to help individuals who are materially poor, but what do we do to stand against the systematic injustice against the material poor? Because let me tell you, there's a whole bunch of rich people who are still quite interested in exploiting those who have little to take the little off them what they have. So how do we stand against this? I can't really hear you. My ears are playing up today, Chris. But phones and hacking and all that sort of stuff. Yes, yeah. But I can just talk to you about. I was just about to say Amazon, but I'm going, well, that's getting a bit too political, isn't it? Big businesses who just want to go, look, we don't really mind if we are only paying a pittance to our workers. We just want to make lots of money for our shareholders and for me. You know, it's tough. It is tough. But there's two things that we can do against systematic injustice. And the people who work in this area suggest that these things are the most effective. You can do lots of things, but one of the things is to raise awareness, to actually help get clear, correct information for people to work through issues. And that will require us to listen to some diverse voices and even the quiet voices. The quiet voices are the people who are the systematic poor, are the material poor, the people who are actually being affected by this. To listen to their voices as well. And then communicate what we become aware of with others. In a world of social media and fake news and everything else that goes on, this is really hard. And people who work in this area say this is really important to do. How do we help raise awareness of issues in a good and healthy way? Is a challenge, but it's something that they reckon that we're all called to do. The other one is advocacy, which is using our voices, our position of privilege and power to help. And once again, people who work in this area say that the two things that at the moment, this changes over eras, that at the moment works the best are writing to politicians and economic pressure. Writing to politicians, like we can write whatever we want on social media, but politicians take social media with a grain of salt. They go, oh, they're just a bunch of passionate loonies out there on social media. I don't have to listen to that. But do you know that if you write a letter to a politician, they're supposed to write back? Do you know that rule? They're supposed to write back. Now, not all of them do, and some of them get their understaff to write back. But let me tell you, if you write to a politician, your letter gets logged, and the topic of your letter gets logged. It makes a difference. And so when I'm sitting here going, I'm annoyed with the government for not stepping up as much as I think they should about the floods, have I written a letter to my politician and say, look, come on, you can do better? No, I haven't. And that's the problem. I'm just annoyed, but I'm not doing anything about it. So one of the things we can do, you can look up on any website, government website, find the email address, send off an email, it gets logged, it gets noticed. The other thing is economic pressure, which has got a bad name now because everyone calls it cancel culture, but it's actually really powerful. Any business does not like it if you write them a letter and say, I do not like this practice that you are doing, and being called out on it. They don't like that at all. And if enough people do it, they will change their practices so you can't call them out on it. It works. And I know that it's been called, cancel culture, blah, 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 but it works. And so the people who are working in this area to try and make a difference say, write to your politicians, write to the companies. You know, it does make a difference. You can do the company one on social media as well. That does work on social media because they've got a social media presence. Politicians don't care about social media. I don't know if that's helpful or not. But I'll say again, this is a huge issue that I don't have all the answers for. But I think that as Christians, we are called to try and make a difference. I gave you this quote last week from Leela Ramadan. She's a Catholic social justice advocate in the West Indies. I found it an amazing quote. I've thought about this quote all week. And when I was writing my sermon, I actually thought, what does this mean for me, this quote? And so I rewrote it for me. And I just want to read out what I wrote for me and whether this might be something that resonates with you too. Because I said this Lent, this Easter, I want my baptism to mean something. I want to be transformed. I want God to stir within me a hunger and thirst for justice and peace. I want to live by every value for which Jesus stood. Well, at least try to. I don't think I can do that. But I want to try to do that. And I go on to say I want to try to overcome the indifference and recognise that I am an instrument, God's instrument, helping to build a better world for all people, but especially in the context of tonight, the material poor. I don't know, is that something that you sit there and go, you know what, I want that too? If it is, we're still on this journey, this Lenten journey towards the cross. I'm going to finish there. I've got a prayer. No, I don't. It's not on my piece of paper here. Oh, that's a pity. It was a good prayer too. I don't really feel like I'm in the place to pray off the cuff. Can I encourage us all to pray on our own? Wherever we find ourselves tonight, pray for the world. Pray for the injustice. Pray for the people who are being exploited, and pray for all of those who God is stirring to make a difference, that we might move from being concerned to move to trying to do something about it. Amen. I'm going to invite the band to come up. We're going to sing our last two songs as we... we've run a bit over time tonight too. Sorry about that. Good discussion. As we finish off our evening, last week we started the passing around the offering bag again. I've been told we've got to do that for a month and then we can review whether this is something that is working at Night Church or not. But we want to try and do it as a way of participating in the spiritual discipline of supporting God's mission in this world. And so I'm going to grab the offering bag and we'll run that around. It's up the back in the back cupboard, Kevin, if you're looking. But let's sing our last two songs.
Right. Once again, I invite you to worship with us however you feel is comfortable for you. Chases me down, fights till I'm found. We're going to finish with a song that I don't think we've actually done for a little while here, called I Wait. Restless heart, do not grow weary. Hold on to faith and wait. The God of love, He will not tarry. No, He is never late. So I wait in the promise. I wait in the hope. Yes, I wait. Unending love. Be still and rest, secure my soul. He knows what's best for me. Here in my patience lies the goal, to wait and trust in Thee. So I wait in the promise. I wait in the power of God's unending love. Even through my imperfections, His light is shining through. Though dim I am, still a reflection of mercy and His truth. I wait in the promise. I wait in the hope. Yes, I wait in the power of God's unending love. Yes, I wait in the promise. I wait in the hope. Yes, I wait. Unending love of God's unending love.
Well, I hope that's been helpful. I know that sometimes we can feel a bit like we felt on Wednesday night, that sense of overwhelmness. But we do believe that Jesus has the power to transform lives and transform communities, and that's what we want to be a part of. That God is actually making a difference in this world, and we want to be the hands and feet to help make that happen. And so as a blessing, or should I say so I can bless you now? As we leave this place, may the blessing of God be with us. May we have that understanding that God is here to help and guide and sustain us in our week and in whatever else we encounter. Amen. For our outro, I was a bit mean to a bloke called Trevor on Wednesday night, and he did a really good video. And a few people afterwards said, "You were too rough on Trevor." I was too rough on Trevor, I confess that. And so as penitence of my roughness on Trevor, I'm showing his video again as the outro. So you can either watch Trevor in the building, but the people online, you'll really enjoy it. Trevor does a great video. So here is Trevor speaking about the exploitation of the economic system that we currently have.
We're going to hear now from Trevor Thomas, who's the chair of the Tier Australia board. He's also the general manager of Invest, an ethical investment company based in Sydney. Here's what Trevor says.
God creates an economy in the Old Testament. It's a fantastic experiment. God sets up a people who are to be his people, to be marked by his values, his concerns. And the basic fundamental precepts of that economy are justice. And so God builds into the system all sorts of checks and balances so that when his people take control of the land and divide it up, it's divided equally between families. There's opportunity. It's a rich land flowing with milk and honey, so people can go and prosper. If they're successful on their farms, they can accumulate wealth. And yet, always behind that is the idea that the wealth is the Lord's and the land is the Lord's. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, says Psalm 24. You take that through to the New Testament and you find Jesus coming into a poor agrarian society where most people are day labourers or work the land at a subsistence level, and he warns them about the dangers of wealth. It's the most bizarre thing that in this poor context, where we would see life from our perspective as being incredibly impoverished, Jesus is warning people about the dangers of wealth and about the need to be generous and open-hearted and open-handed. And where he encounters people who are wealthy and powerful, he repeatedly challenges them not just to have the right attitude, but to express the right attitude in their actions. A characteristic of those who are the community of grace, we who've received grace, are to be people of generosity in everything that we have. A real challenge for us is we live in a comfortable age, and we can become numbed to the suffering of people who are outside our normal perspective. And Jesus calls us to live different lives, and to not fall in the trap of becoming greedy and self-serving. And the only way that we can do that is actually by taking an active stance against greed, because it's a creeping enemy. The risk is that we start using language where we say we want the best for ourselves, or we want the best for our children. And before long we can find that our lifestyles are just like those of our neighbours. And really the only way in which we can counteract that power is to have an offensive weapon, which is generosity. We actually have to break the power of greed by giving things away. The Apostle Paul, writing to Timothy, says the same thing. Command those who are rich in this world to be rich in good deeds, generous, willing to share. We in Australia need to hear those words reverberating in our ears every day. But it's more than that. It's generosity and justice, because there's a just claim that all people who live on earth have on the resources that God put into our hands. The earth is the Lord's. It's not ours to exploit, it's the Lord's. And if our economic system ends up exploiting other people or exploiting the planet in unsustainable ways, then I'd say that we're actually dishonouring God, and that our economic system is immoral and we need to repent and remake our systems around more the values of justice and generosity. So, and I think it's very clear that our economic system actually is very exploitative of other people, and it is very exploitative of the planet. And so we need to look at ways in which we can be agents of change, and we can represent kingdom values in the way that we are.